Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unexpected Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we are back with another guest episode where we're going to talk all about bookkeeping, finances, all the things that are kind of a little scary sometimes when you're running your own business. But before we jump in, Samantha, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Samantha Eck, and I run a bookkeeping firm called Firestorm Finance for Creatives. I also do coaching for bookkeepers, but my biggest focus is definitely on the bookkeeping side of things and helping clients to really read the story their numbers are trying to tell them. I want to really dig into those numbers and actually utilize them for growth by connecting them with goals that they have for their business. So, it's like my really big focus. And coming from a background of having two creative businesses in the past where I used to sell handmade kids' clothes and then I also did pins and stickers, it's really kind of helped me to connect with those creatives on a deeper level than just people who I might not understand as well. Like, for
Mhm.
example, I've worked with people in the construction industry, but I don't understand the construction industry, so it doesn't really make much sense for me to work with that type of audience.
No, totally get that. And I feel like this is such a great topic to cover because when it comes to bookkeeping and finances, I feel like a lot of us are just staring at it with like glazed over eyes. It's something that honestly we don't learn that much about. We don't really learn how to do it. Even if we do learn anything about it, a lot of times it's focused on, being a regular employee and working a job where someone is paying you a set amount. And that's not the case when it comes to running your own business. So, if we're looking at bookkeeping, what are some of the kind of key things that people should pay attention to or even things that get overlooked when we're looking at actually doing that for our business?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is just really basic is tracking your expenses. If you're not tracking them, you're not understanding where your money is going, what you're spending your money on. And that can lead to a lot of deeper issues later on, especially if you're someone who's like, oh, yeah, I can just pay for coffee for myself all the time through my business, which I mean, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know any better. So there's no shame in it. It's just how we go about like educating you to actually understand why that's not deductible. Whereas if you went out with, say, your business partner or you went out and had a networking meeting, that would be something that is deductible. But another thing that's often overlooked is really reconciliations. And a lot of people think that that's just, if I have QuickBooks and I connect my bank account, I'm good. I'm reconciling my accounts. But then you go in there months later and they don't have it reconciled. And you're like, yeah, you haven't reconciled your books. And they're like, well, I don't understand what that means. Reconciliation is when you take that bank statement and you put in your ending balance and you make sure that everything that's in that account matches up to your bank statement. Sometimes, if you're not checking that, that can lead to double recording income. It can lead to overstating your expenses because you might have entered something twice that you didn't even realize that you actually entered twice.
Mhm.
So going back through that and checking that is so vital, but a lot of people tend to skip that step because they don't understand what it is.
Is there a way that we can make all of this kind of bookkeeping a little more manageable or even kind of less of a headache and not like I have no idea what I'm doing or when I need to do this or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's there's a phrase that I've heard before where it's like eat the elephant like one bite at a time. So a lot of people think that they have to take on bookkeeping all as like one thing as a whole,
Mhm.
but there's a lot that you can do step by step. So obviously with when tracking your expenses and income, you're going to want to try and do that weekly, but you can look at your financials on a monthly basis. And I always like to say make it a party, make it fun. Like pick a time, maybe a Friday at the end of the month and say, hey, I'm going to sit down with my books and take a look at them and see what my spending was like, understand what I made in revenue, see what my cash flow was like. Get wine, get coffee, I don't know, put on some music, dance, doesn't matter. Just sit down and do it, make it fun so that you're less intimidated by it. Because I know finances are this thing where everybody looks at it and they're so intimidated because, like, there's so much to it. I just don't understand it. But even if you don't understand everything that's going on, even sitting down and just looking at what you do understand can
Mhm.
help impact decisions in your business later on.
Yeah, and I love what you had said earlier about getting to the point where you're like not really knowing where your money's going because I feel like a lot of us fall into that trap of like my business itself is doing well and like there's a lot of revenue coming in, but like where is it? Like I'm looking at it and I'm like I feel like I didn't pay myself this month and but I had a lot of money coming in, but like where did that money go? And I feel like if we don't sit down and like look at it, sometimes there's even stuff where like we've had this subscription for months and we haven't used it and it's just eating money and like why do we still have this? Like why are we canceling this? I feel like skipping over that part of like looking at it and maybe looking at it a little more regularly and not just, at the end of the quarter when you're trying to make your tax payment and trying to make sure that everything lines up. Like looking at it a little more regularly can help mitigate that like where is all of my money going? Like why do I not feel like I'm being
Yeah.
successful even though I am successful?
Yes. And one of the things I actually like to mention a lot of, and I was just writing content on this actually, is if you've ever seen those silly like Rocket Money commercials where they're like, do you know how many subscriptions you actually have? And then they're like, did you know you've been paying for 3 Netflix subscriptions? And I'm like, that's wild. Like who doesn't know that they're paying for 3 Netflix subscriptions? But the fact of the matter is it's true.
Mhm.
Sometimes you'll buy one for yourself, maybe you buy one for a family member, but it could be the same for your business. Maybe you bought like 3 Adobe subscriptions and you didn't even know it. If you don't look at your books on a regular basis, you're never going to see that.
Yeah, there's so many things that we buy, and either I feel like for us it kind of works both ways, where we buy it and we're like, okay, we don't need this anymore, or we look back and we're like, wait, what is this? And then we're like, oh my god, this is such a great resource. Like, why am I not using this? Like, I'm gonna start
Yes.
implementing this, and like I pay for it. I need to actually make sure that I'm using it. Like, I feel like we run into that
Yeah.
all the time, and we're like, oh, we need to like write this down somewhere that we have a subscription to this, and it can really help us with like X, Y, or Z across the business. But if we're looking at bookkeeping, how kind of in the bigger role of financial stability, how does bookkeeping play a role in that and your finances and like making sure that you're actually at the point where you want to be in your business and just even in your, personal financial journey?
So, I mean, bookkeeping and financials in general are more than just crunching numbers and putting them into an accounting software. When you think of like the bigger picture, you want to understand, what your limitations are. So when you're saying, okay, I want to make $10,000 a month, and at the end of the month you only made 5,000, the real thought behind that is not to shame yourself and say, oh my gosh, I didn't make the 10,000 that I wanted. It's to look at your numbers on that deeper level and understand why. Why didn't I make that 10,000? Is my pricing not where it should be? Am I undercharging for my pricing? Like I have all these essential softwares that I'm using, but my money coming in doesn't match
Hmm.
like the money that is going out. So how can I fix that? Or if you are spending too much on expenses, analyzing your expenses and saying, what do I really need? Like, what's working for me? Is spending $500 a week on Google Ads really performing well for me? Is that giving me a good ROI? So, when we think of like, how does that play into the bigger picture? Yes, you can just look at your numbers at a base level and say, hey, this is what my financials are presenting to me. But if you don't actually look at them and say, what is this doing for me? You're
Hmm.
not going to get that bigger picture because you're just going to look at numbers on a page and say, oh, okay, great, I'm making money.
Do you have any tips for people who feel like they're kind of struggling with inconsistent cash flow and feeling like they're always like kind of personally struggling because of it? Because I know, especially when you're on your boss and you're doing service based stuff, it's not necessarily that same client flow, that same cash flow every single month. So how can we kind of work with that and make it work for us in our lives?
I mean, so really it's all about understanding trends, especially with that inconsistent cash flow. Obviously, within your first year, it's going to be a little bit tougher because you're not going to have that like history behind everything.
Hmm.
And that's where I find it a lot of really hard is because a lot of entrepreneurs give up in that first year because they're like, oh, I'm not making any money, I'm not doing well enough. But the truth of the matter is, you kind of have to give yourself that shot.
Hmm.
So, yes, within that first year, you want to see if you're making money. You want to really attempt to do everything you can to make money. But the longer you're in business, the more you can utilize your data, to grow and like actually understand your numbers, especially with that inconsistent cash flow. Because let's say, you've been in business for 2 years, you're looking at last year and you see, okay, November was a really low month for me. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a low month for me again. Now you can plan for that in October and say, oh my goodness, October was a huge month for me. I need to make sure that I set aside enough money so that, November is less of a hassle for me. I'm not
Mhm.
struggling. And not to like kind of point this out, but I am going to be doing like a workshop on this for a lot of entrepreneurs where at the end of the year, we're going to be talking about profitability and cash flow and how that gets generally tighter around the end of the year. Because
Mhm.
a lot of people have those unexpected expenses with Christmas and Thanksgiving and everything like that. And that's on the personal side, but even as solopreneurs and single member LLCs, partnerships, whatever small business you are, usually you end up struggling with cash flow in the holiday months. So
Mhm.
that's when you really need to be looking at your money overall and saying, how can I ensure that I keep things consistent? And what can I pull back on in those months that I don't need to be spending on? So, if you are spending $500 a month on Google Ads and that's working for you, that's great. But if your cash flow is really, really low in the holiday months, maybe you need to pull back on that in those months and say, I'm not going to advertise for these months because it's super slow and I never get the client payback that I need from that.
And I think that's such a great point of like realistically, I feel like most of us have months where we kind of see that trend of it being slower. If you are like, no, everything's coming in exactly the same every month, like that's incredible and like keep going with that. But I feel like we all kind of see those little lulls, but it doesn't always click in our head to be like, okay, I know that the summer is really slow. So let me see what I can do in the first half of the year to put, X amount aside every single month. So I'm not taking massive chunks out of, every
Yes.
single month, but like putting things aside so that when I get to that month, I don't feel like I'm, scraping pennies together to try and pay my expenses or whatever it might be. I already know that I have that. I have that safety net. If things do slow down, I'm still comfortable. I'm confident that everything's going to work out. But it's kind of sometimes it's hard to be like, okay, how do I put this aside, make sure that I don't spend it, I don't put it towards anything else in the business or personal life, because I know that we fall into the trap a lot of like, okay, we have this money, let's see how we can invest it in the business, and then we're like, that was good, but also should we have saved it? Like, I don't we're kind of towing the line of how to actually do that. But I think being able to like forecast that and actually look back on it and figure out what the trends are helps you plan and also helps you decide if there's anything you can do to kind of pick up business in those slower months. And maybe you do need to, start a couple months earlier trying to push things to get people in during those months or, whatever it is. So I think overall there's so many reasons why it like helps to look at it and kind of understand where your cash flow is coming from and when it's coming in.
Yeah, and I think it's so important too because like when you do analyze those numbers, it gives you that ability to plan.
Hmm.
Like without analyzing them, you don't have any knowledge of that. So, you could be coming up on a slow month and all of a sudden you're floundering. And then that's where that desperation comes from. And we all know that we don't want to come from that place of scarcity when we're trying to attract clients because
Hmm.
if we come at them from that place of scarcity, they're going to look at us and say, whoa, like, why are you trying to like get me? So having that in mind and really understanding your cash flow and being like, hey, I'm fine, even though
Hmm.
this is a slow month, I'm fine. It allows you to keep your messaging consistent. So I know a lot of people say, oh, your finances just are one part of your business, but there's so many parts of your business that finances touch that people
Hmm.
don't think about that when you truly analyze it, you're like, whoa, like I didn't realize that it affected my business this much.
So if we're thinking about that, are there any kind of, I know we talked obviously about cash flow a little bit, but are there any other important factors or metrics that we should pay attention to make sure that we are creating something that's stable and sustainable for us?
Yes. So going back to kind of that pricing issue, one of the biggest percentages or metrics that I like to think of is your profit margin. So when you're looking at your profit margin, you want to understand, what you're actually making. So it's when you take your revenue and you subtract out your expenses. And a lot of people say that, when you see all those coaches and things like that, and not all of them, but a lot of them are saying, oh, I made $10,000 a month. But is that $10,000 in revenue, or is that
Mhm.
$10,000 in income? Because if they're just talking about revenue, you have no idea how much expenses they had. They might have come down to it and made a bottom line of like $300 that month.
Mhm.
So it's much more important to actually understand what you truly made at the end of the month, and then take that percentage and say, okay, I have a profit margin of 10%, but I really want my profit margin to be 20%. How do I fix that? Like, do I need to make my packages have a higher price, or do I need to cut down on expenses? And again, I know I'm like repeating that cutting down on expenses or raising your prices, but those are truly the cornerstone of how
Mhm.
you can impact that profit margin. Another one that I always like to talk about is your client acquisition cost. And people think this is crazy because like, what does that matter? But it's so important to think about, because
Yeah.
if you're spending that $500 on Google and you're getting one client out of that $500 a month you're spending, that client is now worth $500. And everybody thinks about that and they're like, that doesn't make any sense. But it does, because you just spent $500 in advertising and you got one person out of it.
Mhm.
So if you even if you spent that on a whole quarter, now that client is worth $1,500. So analyzing that and saying, am I getting any payback from that? Like, is it actually bringing me clients? And understanding how much it is to acquire a client is so important, because it can truly impact like what's working and what's not working. So if those Google ads aren't working, then maybe you need to put more money into, social media ads or something like that, just to really show you what's working in your business so that you can grow in a way that's meaningful.
And I think that's such a big thing that not a lot of people actually talk about when they're looking at what it is costing us to get our clients, or even sometimes the effort we're putting in if we're doing outside things like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing at a retreat. I'm going to spend X amount of money, doing all of this. But if I book one client from it, that's gonna, that revenue is gonna bring in triple the amount of what I actually spent. So like, is that worth it for my business? And I think sometimes we forget that and we're like, just okay, are they coming in? Look at it, yes. But like all of the different things that we're actually doing and spending to reach those clients, to market to them, to get in front of those audiences, is that actually worth it? And I think taking that step back and being like, what am I actually getting out of this? And if it's like great, obviously keep doing it. Like if you're spending
Yes,
$500, but you're getting, $10,000 in contracts coming in because of it, that's amazing. Like, that's absolutely worth
yes,
it. But I think it is also like what you said, looking at it in the seasons. If it's, 1 month it's doing really great, but then there's, 4 or 5 months where you're spending the $500 and you're not seeing any clients come in, maybe looking at adjusting that or seeing what you can do differently, or different markets you can, get to in that time, and everything like that. Because I know even with us, there's like, we work with a lot of wedding photographers, but depending on where you are in the country, your wedding season is very different. So if we're looking at some of the people in, the hotter states out here on the West Coast, they might not be doing a lot of weddings in the middle of summer when it's 110 degrees, but in the winter, when it's snowing and absolutely freezing in the Northeast, it's sunny and 70 degrees here and people are getting married. So, kind of even looking at
yes.
like the different markets you can reach in the different times of year, depending on, who's going to be looking at that time.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important too, is because if you don't understand, like if you don't understand those metrics, you're just
Hmm.
never going to find a way to grow. And you're never going to understand, okay, this is my slow season, maybe I need to shift it. And even then, like going back to what we were talking about, slow seasons, using those metrics to understand, okay, my advertising works on this platform during this month, but it
Hmm.
doesn't work during this month, will help you to understand, okay, I need to stop putting my marketing dollars into this bucket during the summer months and start putting them into this bucket during the summer months. That way you can use that to still gain clients if you're wanting to spend money on marketing, but you're not wasting your money during the months where you're really slow.
Absolutely. And I know you had touched on it a little bit earlier when we were looking at deductions. And I feel like this is something that is very confusing for a lot of us when we're looking at what deductions actually are, how they work, and like what we can actually deduct in our business. So do you have any tips on helping people understand what they are a little bit better, and then maybe some things that, general things that are deductible that, maybe we don't think about or don't even realize that we can deduct from?
Yeah. I mean, tax deductions are always a scary thing because you don't want to get the IRS mad at you if you ever got audited. But they're honestly not that scary. The way I like to think of it is if you're being selfish, it's probably not deductible. So a lot of my clients, for example, I have a client who is a events coordinator. She goes to a lot of events. She does a lot of speaking. She keeps trying to write off all of her clothing and all of her hairstyle, like all of her hairstyling that she gets done
Hmm.
for these events. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're talking to people in front of people and it's for business, like the IRS is not going to let you write off your hair. They're just not. So, I mean, and it's the same thing that goes for when you get coffee by yourself, you go out
Hmm.
for lunch. A lot of people are like, I don't understand why that's not deductible. When I work for a corporate job, I can go out for lunch and they'll deduct it because you're not working for somebody, you're working for yourself. And essentially, the IRS is saying, well, I'm not going to pay for your, like, I'm not going to let you deduct your lunch so that we have to pay for it.
Hmm.
Now, on the other hand, if you're not being selfish, you're kind of like going out with people, you're doing things, you're interacting with others, that's a little bit different. If you're not a speaker at an event, but you bought a ticket to go to that event, that's deductible. If you're going traveling for work, that's deductible. And of course, meals during traveling are a completely different thing. Like when people think, oh, well, can I not buy like coffee for myself while I'm traveling? It's completely different than just buying a coffee for yourself every morning. Because when you're traveling, you're doing it for business.
Hmm.
So usually that's deductible. And usually those are only 50% deductible. A lot of people are like, oh, I'll just go out and eat a bunch with a bunch of different people. And I'm like, you could, but it's not going to really like impact your taxes that much.
Hmm.
When you're thinking of deductions, you want to think of what is actually going to help me perform best in my business. So, is a new computer going to help me perform best? Probably. That's absolutely something that's deductible. Is a new desk going to help me perform better? Probably. So, again, that's absolutely deductible. You want to think of the things that are going to help you streamline your business. And like, that's not being selfish, right?
Hmm.
Because you're helping grow your business, you're helping your clients by doing better work and performing better. So that's obviously going to help you grow. But yeah, that's really the way I like to think of it when I'm thinking about what's deductible, what's not deductible, is thinking in terms of the level of, I guess, a little bit of selfishness. Like if you're only thinking of yourself and you're only thinking, oh, if I do this, I can just write it off, it's
Hmm.
probably not deductible. But if you're like, this can better my business, it can help my clients, it's gonna, allow me to develop professionally, it's more than likely deductible.
I feel like that's such a interesting way. I've never heard it like actually explained like that, but just really getting to the core of it and being like, is this helping my business or do I just want this? Are like
Yes.
two completely different buckets that we can put each purchase into, and what it's actually doing. So I feel like that's such a unique way to do it, but then you look at it and you're like, that makes total sense. Like of course that would be, the line between is this actually deductible or not. So I love that.
I mean, I'm not trying to be like a negative Nelly either and be like, oh, don't be selfish. But like at the same point, like the IRS isn't going to come in and look at your books and say, oh my gosh, wow, you spent like $10,000 on clothes. What was the clothes for? Oh, it was just for me to go to get a photo shoot for my business. They're going to look at that and say, well, what does that have to do with your business though?
Yeah.
Like, are you wearing the clothes for yourself afterwards? And if you're like, yeah, I am wearing the clothes for, they're like, well, then that's not a business
Mhm.
expense. So you just really have to think a little bit deeper on those things.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of us are probably risk averse to the point where like we're not writing off things that we probably could write off because we don't want to be audited and have to explain all of that. But I think, thinking about it that way and having that kind of differentiation can help maybe give us a little bit of clarity on what's actually going to be something we can and can't actually write off.
Yes.
So, if we're thinking about kind of all of this combined, how does it play into like the bigger picture of our business? And is there any ways that we can use all of this information to actually help us potentially like grow and scale our business in the future?
Yes. So absolutely. Like I was saying earlier, the longer you're in business, the more historical data you have. And honestly, the more historical data you have, the more you're going to be able to grow.
Hmm.
Because, and I'll give you an example of a client I have right now. They've been in business for 3 years. We knew that September was a slow month for them historically. So that was a month where I was like, hey, you guys have some pretty big expenses coming up this month. Is there a way that we can either pay them in like August, or can we
Hmm.
pay them in October? Like, how can we shift that so you guys don't have a slow month this month? And that's the power of those numbers. So growing and utilizing them and analyzing them over the years is going to give you that really good backbone to your business that you're going to be able to make those shifts in real time without having to be like, oh my goodness, I don't know what's coming. You're
Hmm.
going to know what's coming because honestly, and usually your financials are not like crazy, like up, down, up, down, up, down. Usually in the first year they are. But then after a while, you start to get into this trend and you can start to use that to grow.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to like take the time to have all of this stuff written out, like laid out and correct, because just like anything else that we're going to do in our lives, like the more data you have to back it up and to look back on, the more successful
Yes.
your kind of analysis is going to be. Your forecasting for what you can do or what you can't do, or, what your goal for this year might be versus what your, 5 year goal is going to be. And I think just taking the time to like lay that out and be like, okay, let me make sure this is all set. So when I'm looking back on this in a year or two or trying to compare things, I have actual data that I know is right and can, really help me figure out what my goals are and what I am able to do without feeling like I'm stretching myself too thin or potentially going to get into a spot where like I can't pay for the things I need to pay for. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about all of this today. I know everyone is going to find this super helpful because this is definitely something that a lot of us struggle with. But if anyone wants to learn more about you and your business and everything that you do, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on my website, www.firestormfinance.com. Or if you want to connect with me on a more like personal level, I'm on socials pretty much everywhere, especially on Threads and Instagram at Firestorm Finance. And I will also be providing two freebies for you. One that's a little bit more geared towards beginners if you're looking to, get an accounting software set up. You just want to understand your numbers, start really understanding them. I have a QuickBooks checklist, setup checklist, and then if you're someone who's already been in business and you're just looking to elevate your business a little bit, you want to really dig into those numbers and start to understand them in a way that's not just numbers on a page, then I have my strategic success mini workshop, which is a little small taste of what I give my clients either yearly, biannually, or quarterly with their strategy sessions so that we can really dig into their numbers. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all of those links down in the description. We definitely recommend checking all of that out. Thank you again so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks for having me.